right, so let's get into the topics that you wanted to discuss, which I think are great. I love these topics. So the first one you wanted to discuss was, but first, a message from our sponsor. SE Rankings is a top-rated SEO platform designed to help agencies and businesses of all sizes automate their daily tasks and make data-driven decisions. You can get your 14 free day trial at seranking.com. Check it out. You wrote this piece about the state of SEO studies, and I just go ahead and explain what you did.
Sure. This was a couple years ago. It was maybe about a year and a half ago at this point. But I had been wanting to write an article of this sort for some time, and it was kind of a buildup of a problem I had with a lot of the different SEO studies that kept coming out, where they usually were done by the SEO tool companies, or they were something along those lines. But anybody that had like a sizable amount of data available to it, maybe they had their own index, whatever it is, and it was big people like Moz or Ahrefs or things like that, and they would get information. Sometimes they'd actually get actual statisticians that come in and help them with certain aspects of it, whatever it is, but then they would kind of like take whatever analysis came from it and just make it ugly in some form, whatever it is. And so I wanted to do something more than just like a commentary piece where I came in and said, like, these don't make any sense and it's ridiculous, whatever it is. So I actually recruited in like an actual statistician, mathematician, and we did this interview, and she was very helpful in this sense. But she went through, kind of looked over a lot of the data, looked over a lot of the studies, and really kind of called out what the big problem was with a lot of these things. And there was a lot of problems. There was a lot of just the conclusions that didn't make any sense, were the things they kind of pushed forward, if they even presented the numbers, were very weak on those types of things, and they were just weird. And there was instances where it's one of the things where her big takeaway in mine as well was the idea of, like, it seems like they have like the best intent in this type of things. Yeah. They come from this idea of they really do want to help, and they're really trying to, like, crack the code of Google and figure these types of things out, which is, it's an interesting kind of concept to it, but in reality, it's just not something that can truly be crackable. Like, there's too many variations to it. It's too big. The index is too giant, and a lot of the information that was coming out of these things, like, they were trying to, like, isolate one piece of it, of something that had too many variables to it and would change too often and do whatever it is. And so, and some of the conclusions were weak. That was the first time where, she really kind of poked a big hole in, like, domain authority as a concept and a bunch of other things. And of course, it made a pretty big impact. There was a lot of discussions around it. It angered a lot of people, especially the ones that were kind of like called out in it specifically. And again, I had to go back and remind everybody, look, I'm not like pointing fingers. This isn't like a hate mail kind of things to it. It's one of the things where the problem is that people were taking this data and they were using it for specific things, and that could cause serious damage. They were following things based on these kind of assumptions to it, and and specific things that are parts of, like, these tools, whatever it is, that were beyond the usual, like, auditing tools and other things that were very useful and handy, whatever it is, but they were coming up with these phantom metrics that really didn't mean anything. Like, they really didn't have any association to it, and they were causing, like, these underground types of systems that were used by link builders and used by shady domain sellers and things like that as a way to kind of, like, legitimize what they were doing, when it really didn't say anything. And it's something where it was so prevalent. It's obviously still around. You can't get around that kind of stuff. And now you're hearing a lot more people kind of like jump into the idea of, like, that's, this is a vanity metric, and don't, they ignore that. It's not really a thing anymore. But it's very prevalent, and it's. But I guess the good news is I really haven't seen too many other studies like that since then. So I don't know. It's
you're right. There haven't been many SEO. Well, they're basically Google ranking studies.
Yeah.
And over the years, I don't think those studies claim to say this is how the algorithm works. This is what's most important.
Yeah.
A lot of those studies are basically like, one is basically they asked 50 SEOs to rank them.
Yeah.
Which those are opinions of the 50 SEOs, which
yeah.
probably is more valuable than the ones that try to say, let's look at the index and see what's ranking and figure out what links they have. It's probably more useful than having an SEO vote on it.
Yeah.
Because they're an SEO. They deal with this every day. They might be biased, but you have enough of them, hopefully whatever you think service is the best. But they were always correlation studies. They weren't called like causation studies.
Yeah.
So,
and that was the problem. And there were so many times too when I think the really big problem was that they would come out and they release these studies and say, hey, look, this is the way this is according to the correlation data we had, and they would kind of pop up and say, hey, look, we admit it, we're not scientists, this wasn't a scientific study, whatever it is, and I go, but the problem is that because you put it out there and because they come from a place of being a respected company in the industry, people just do believe it wholesale, and they say, well, this is the way it works, and then they go out and try and apply it to other things, and it can be really damaging in the sense to it. And plus, it causes so many arguments, so many different people saying like, well, look, this Moz did the study, and this means this, and I go, well, yeah, but they actually don't know, and in reality, John Mueller or just anybody in the mat would come back and say, well, no, that's not how that works at all. Like, this isn't a big thing, and everybody got in a really funny habit where they come back and like kind of shrug and say, well, we said it wasn't scientific or this, or they'd kind of take this bizarre path of saying like, well, we'll take them at their word, but still, verify and trust and verify and things like that, and it ends up sowing this weird like attitude in the SEO world of people just like not even trusting anything that comes out of John Mueller's mouth or whatever it is, and or getting frustrated with him because why don't they tell us everything? And I go, well, it's their company; they don't have to tell you anything, right? But it's I think it does a lot of damage. But lucky enough, like I said, I really haven't seen much of anything outside of like the zero-click study, which I also did a piece on at one point. But
I do agree. I do think those studies come from a good place.
Yeah.
And I do think they try to explain how they get to the methodology, but nobody reads it. And you see the same thing in any industry, even all the time with politics. You come out with data, you can make the data look any way you want.
Yeah.
I don't think they came out with that, Moz or any of these companies came out with their data to make the data look a certain way.
Yeah.
They did it because they really wanted to help the community, I think. Also as a content marketing play.
Yeah. It was a good content marketing play. I'll give them that one. Yeah. And it certainly gets them a lot of attention, a lot of traction to it. But I think the thing is I think, and we actually heard this. I remember the VP of marketing over at Ahrefs. She was the one of the first ones to actually like reach out afterwards and kind of say, this made us think a lot over here, and we're really going to rethink, like how we put these out and how we're going to say these studies going forward, because we realized that this could be pretty damaging to it. And really, that was hopefully really all I wanted. It's like those studies can be helpful, they can be inspiring, they can provoke some great discussions around the things, but I think they need to be presented in this idea of saying, look, this is a hardcore correlation study. We really don't know. Matter of fact, and actually make sure that they get just a comment from Google beforehand to basically say, like, are we anywhere close to this type of stuff?
Well, Google's not going to comment. But
and at least they could say, no, that's not it. But, but it's, it just makes for an interesting thing. But
I always enjoy them, meaning understanding what the data suggests and also what people think.
Yeah.
Because most of them also had both of those things in there. Like, what do SEOs think? Rank it. And what do the metrics say? Mm-hmm. I always find that interesting. And then a lot of times we actually at Search Engine Land made a periodic table of SEO success factors.
Yeah.
We don't call them ranking factors. We call them success factors.
Yeah.
And it's just basically basic SEO. And we had on there like what to rank him with Danny Sullivan, like, +3, +2, whatever.
Yeah.
And we would just sit there and argue about, is it between 0, from 1, 2, or 3? Is it really important 3? Is it not so important 1?
Right.
And often we disagree with the correlation studies that were done, just because, DA is not a factor. And Moz said that. It's just, when Google got rid of PageRank, that really helped their branding on DA.
Yeah. And I remember, I was at a show with Gary Isles once time, and they were talking about DA and PA at the time, and I remember he just kind of said, he goes, not only is it not a factor, but it's not anything we do. Like, it's not anything that we really like pay, like we don't have an equivalent for it. He goes, like page authority, it's close. There's something to there, whatever it is, that's a real thing to it. But domain authority it's just not a thing, whatever it is. Right. And that ended up leaking out of that meeting because it was supposed to be like this closed door meeting, and when we were in Sydney, Australia, and everything with a small group of people, but of course it got out. It was the way it worked. But I remember like that was probably the first time I'd ever heard like a really specific way to say like, no, this specifically isn't this type of thing. But even then, like, people have made other assumptions before. I remember I've done a piece on the road for years now, and actually now I still do it at UCLA, which was the whole thing about like social media being a ranking signal in one form or the other, and just how many times how many times Google's denied it. I have this whole timeline on the screen where just
it makes me feel like I'm a failure because I cover and nobody reads that.
Yeah.
And then you have these people saying, no, this is really a ranking factor.
Yeah.
So you can say I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Some people, some people say I don't believe Google because they're not going to tell us what the ranking factors are. I get that.
Yeah.
But plus some people just think that Google says that is a ranking factor.
Yeah.
That I don't get.
Yeah, I've never got that one. That's one of my, like, it keeps coming up, and you'll say it. You'll see it in, like, the SEO Signals group on Facebook or some of the other ones, and there'll be like some new person will come on and will say something about it, and you'll know that isn't a thing that's been said many times, and they go, well, of course it is, like that. It's when I go, but it really isn't, like, it really not. They I don't know how many different ways they can say that it's not a thing, and then but they just want to believe it because it's one of those things where it's a very easy answer for how it works. If you really think about it.
It was a thing for a period.
Yeah.
It was a thing for like 2 years.
Yeah, and it was, even then, it was like one little piece of it.
Yeah, it was tiny.
It was.
And Microsoft fully integrated Bing with Facebook at one time through a partnership, and Google had their Google Plus, their plus ones and stuff.
Yeah.
Before even Google Plus, it was like plus ones and stuff in the search results, and they tried it. It's like this didn't work.
Yeah, and that was a mess too. Like, that whole system to it. I mean, that was when.
Like 2010, I think.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, and was it Cyrus that had done a study, and he'd gotten some help from another statistician to do whatever it is. And I remember, I think Matt had to come out in that one, basically said, like, it's just not, like, the conclusions are wrong. It's just not the way this works. And I think the bigger picture, and when they tried to backpedal it a little bit, was to say, like, well, in the sense that, it spawns new pages, and these pages help, and they can cause this kind of stuff. And it made it, like, less powerful, because the original assumption was that it was a really direct line, that it was like, no, by doing this, it improves your ranking. And he said, well, it just isn't. That's not the way it works. And I think that's one of those times where, like, again, from the study perspective, like, the first time I heard it, I go, we just really need to stop doing this. I think we're doing damage.
Right. Which brings us to the other study you wanted to talk about, the zero-click study.